Hi, I'm Danielle, your host on the Emerging Markets Tech Startups podcast. While traveling to over 90 countries, I was inspired by the entrepreneurial spirit across startup communities in Africa, Latin America, Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. On the show, we bring you stories from entrepreneurs, startup ecosystem innovators, and investors. We discuss what makes these markets culturally and historically unique, local trends, local challenges consumers and founders face, and the opportunities. Let's get started. So I'm so excited to have you on the show to talk to us about Lithuania, the Baltics, Nordics, a region I got to visit last year. But first, I'll give it to you. Tell us who you are and what does BitDegree and all of the other 10 companies you founded do.
Okay, thank you, Diana. So I'm Danielius Stasiulius, CEO of BitDegree, an online education platform. So we are trying to make online education work. Before founding BitDegree, I was working in management consulting, but with a focus with startups and innovation. So I was developing startup ecosystems in northeast of Europe, but also spent some time in the Bay Area in Berkeley at Skydeck Accelerator.
On this podcast, people are always curious about the market. So here we have Lithuania, but we also have Lithuania in the very interesting region.
Lithuania is around 2.75 million people, so it's a very small country.
What about the Baltic region?
The Baltics, the three Baltic sisters or tigers, we had a lot of names. So the countries are Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, because we as a cluster have broken free from the Soviet Union some 30 years ago, and the countries took a very similar path towards developing their economies. So it's a market economy, but at the same time competing with each other. For example, Estonians are always better at PR, including startup ecosystems.
It's so interesting that Lithuania and the other Baltic countries have been able to separate themselves from Russian Soviet rule, which I know some of the Eastern European countries like Belarus and Ukraine are still under. What does being part of the Baltics or the new Nordics mean?
But since recently, the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, are recognized as the new Nordics, and more we get those collaborations that include Scandinavians, and it's pretty close, but let's say culturally the countries are very different, and actually none of the Baltic countries are of Slavic descent or heritage. The language is different, so we do not share the same language, so maybe that helped a bit. But also, when our countries were breaking free, they actually Baltic states were innovation powerhouse of the Soviet Union, one of the innovation powerhouses. So a lot of high-tech industry was concentrated in Baltics, and maybe that's why we are good now in tech. But back in the day, this independence, self-declared independence from Soviet Union was recognized by Iceland, another friendly country. They were strong enough to say that this is wrong, and we recognize Lithuania as an independent state, and we needed such a support. So now we are paying forward this or paying back actually Iceland what they did to us. We are providing the same help to other countries. So really the sentiment is pro-freedom in the Baltic states.
You guys serve as a beacon of hope. I mean, me visiting Latvia, I heard something similar too. And just amongst the people, the education I know in Latvia, with a lot of people attending the university you went to, Stockholm School of Economics in Riga. Yeah. I mean, a lot of really smart people, good talent has come out of that school. And I think the Baltics really does serve as a ray of hope for some of these other countries. I'm really curious. I mean, one, is BitDegree building for Lithuania as the market? And if so, what are things you guys have had to customize locally to make sure the product serves the people's needs?
Well, one of the first rules of thumb when building a startup in the Baltic states or in Lithuania is do not focus on your home market. The home market is just too small, like 2.7 million people. This is not a big market, and it's pretty different from any other market. So even though you might learn some lessons here in this market, they will not be applicable to other countries. Therefore, as a rule of thumb, Lithuanian startups should focus on other markets straight away. Well, maybe this rule does not apply only for breakthrough innovations that are so breakthrough that it doesn't matter, about the market, whether the market is there. Actually, supposedly, the CRISPR was invented in Lithuania before it was invented in US. So it was a matter of, I think, months or a year or two. But three.
Can you share with people what that is?
So CRISPR is this gene editing drive, I think. Basically, it's a technology how you can cut and paste genes, and it was discovered, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, I guess, and it was discovered independently by 3 teams globally. So I think 2 of them were in the US and another one was in Lithuania, and this Lithuanian one might be the earliest one, who knows, but of course all the attention was won by one of the US teams. But immediately some of the US industry giants have bought the innovation.
Because we do good PR.
Yes, Lithuania is very bad at PR.
Well, you guys are apparently really good at basketball. When I went there on a walking tour, they're like, "Oh, did you know we contribute a large number of like NBA players and we're really tall?" And I was like, "That's so random. I didn't know that."
I guess every nation must be proud about something, So Lithuanians can be proud about basketball, although it's nerve-wracking always to see how the Lithuanian team performs. It's like, you have talented people who do not put enough work, but sometimes they win big, but quite often they disappoint you in their performance. But in general, like, Lithuania has achieved a lot of good things in basketball, in Olympics, in EuroLeague and similar.
I mean, for a small country that is the size of a city in some countries, you guys have definitely pulled your weight. So very interesting. Are there any local problems or opportunities that startups can be solving in the Baltics that are unique to the Baltics?
Well, I would say that govtech might be one of the breakthrough areas. Estonia is actively advertising it. Lithuania also launched a successful GovTech Lithuania initiative. Thing is,
are you guys also able to vote digitally? I know Estonia is the only country that enables that, and I'm jealous because we need that right now.
Yes, you do, but it's really a question whether it's secure enough. And some of the, let's say, stronger experts in cybersecurity would say that it's not secure. Others would say it's secure. So it's a debate, but I think that solutions exist. In Lithuania, we do not apply it. Actually, we'll have election in less than a month for the parliament. So it will be really interesting to see what happens in US in elections and in Lithuania. But we will not use digital voting, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely the model country I look to in e-government. And I think I remember going to Azerbaijan, and they were also trying to copy this e-digital thing. They were doing pretty well. You also talked about fintech earlier. Why is the Baltics, Lithuania, the heart of fintech?
So one of the breakthrough initiatives in Lithuania has become fintech. And there are a couple of fintechs operating. And they decided to lobby for better conditions for fintech, create a regulatory sandbox. And the regulators went along, mostly, like the Bank of Lithuania, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Economy and Innovation, Invest Lithuania. So they all came together and said, yes, this is like, we can create a viable sandbox for fintechs in Lithuania. And in like 5 years, we have seen a tremendous growth of fintechs, not only created by Lithuanians, but also a huge influx of foreign fintechs that came here because of other, because of regulatory conditions, that you can actually create a fintech here. You can get this e-money license faster and well, with better conditions than anywhere else in the world. And that was highly advertised by the government officials everywhere, going to conferences and presenting as Lithuania as a destination for fintechs. So I think that's a huge incentive for startups from other countries to come to Lithuania and create here. And
what were some of the companies that came out of fintech companies that came out of that?
so like maybe one of the local fintech companies, Transfer Go, similar to TransferWise from Estonia, that provides remittance service, is growing quite nicely. I think they have raised nearly 100 million to date and are quite successful. Other fintechs that maybe came to Lithuania include Revolut, as a new destination in Europe, especially due to Brexit. A lot of companies had to flee United Kingdom in order to find residence in Europe. So Lithuania became one of the hotspots. And I hear rumors that more and more like blockchain or crypto companies, including exchanges, are considering Lithuania as a viable destination. And it's the only from the 3 Baltic countries that still has SWIFT, which SWIFT system that allows for US dollar bank accounts. And it's not easy to have it. And if there is too much of suspicious activity, or or the conditions are too loose, then usually US pulls back SWIFT from the country. So we cherish that, and therefore the screening of fintechs and crypto companies is quite rigid. But once you come here and you do not want to abuse the system, but you have favorable conditions to develop your fintech, then Lithuania is a place to do that.
What else has enabled such a strong tech ecosystem? Is it the engineering talent? Is it investment? What have you seen has been strong?
So I think it was engineering talent, because historically Baltic states were the engineering hub of Soviet Union, and in general math skills were strong, and Soviet education had strong math and discipline, and therefore I think we have a lot of analytical talent, a higher percentage of analytical talent than in other countries. More people chose the engineer's profession or occupation. Therefore, we had this dormant engineering talent that we have successfully transformed into the tech talent, and that supported the build up of our tech scene. And actually, if you think about tech, it's really a liberating space, because all you need is internet, yes, computer, and without much of heavy investments, similar to those needed in biotech or physics or lasers. In IT, you basically need sharp minds, and that's it.
See, the Soviets did leave some positive lasting elements, even though I'm sure it was internalized from you guys. Let's talk a bit about BitDegree. I'm really curious what motivated the founding of it, when before that you were doing startup ecosystem kind of proliferation?
Well, when you work with startups all day, you're thinking about your own startup ideas. What is good? What is bad? What would you do? And after a while, you're actually getting fed up by the startup community for maybe not taking your advice so seriously or not valuing it enough. And then you're feeling this urge maybe to show them that my advice is good, so I'll go and do it myself. Why aren't you listening to me? I'm giving you great advice. We have a mission that matters, and we have the quickly changing landscape of education industry. We want to help people get into the digital sector, basically reskill and upskill people into digital careers. And if we look at this challenge through the lens whether we can get person employed, get him or her a promotion, or increase their salary. So if you look at education from this angle, then you understand that the existing education system does not serve that purpose. Our existing education system is helping people to obtain broad knowledge, but not specific knowledge that could lead to better economic opportunities. And the existing education system also fails to deliver what the labor market needs, and producing too much humanities majors and too few STEM majors. So right now, the labor market is in disbalance, and there is an opportunity to reskill and become a developer or copywriter or graphic designer. What we are trying to achieve with BitDegree, we want to create the shortest possible learning paths towards the outcomes they desire. Would it be to reskill and become a developer from scratch, or to upskill and obtain skills such as machine learning?
I'm so excited that this is coming out of Lithuania and that you're leading the forefront of this. Online education was really close to my heart. I remember when Coursera and Khan Academy came out. I was like, this is going to change the world and everyone's going to get a Harvard degree. Well, not the degree, but Harvard level education. And then going from when did they start? Like 2010, 2013? Those aspirations, 2012. Those aspirations kind of withered away as you realize people are not that motivated, even though all of these things are at the tip of your finger. So hopefully BitDegree solves the motivation problem, because I think that is actually the critical unlock, not just to provide the content, but getting people excited about education, excited about growing, learning, and particularly helping people realize tangible outcomes that education will turn into. I mean, a big reason why people go to college is because they realize it's going to help them get a job, and that if they don't go to college, they won't get a job. So what is that incentive? Because people need carrots. I could talk about this in a whole episode. Let's switch gears a bit and talk about Lithuania and Baltic ecosystem. Particularly, talk us through the top 3 most successful local startups, either out of the country or region.
Okay, so I think first of all we would have Vinted, because it's the most well known. It's a marketplace for pre-loved fashion. So how used clothing, yes, because girls mostly, I do not discriminate, but mostly girls as their users. Want to look nice, but once you purchase a dress, how many times can you use it and still be original, let's say, and therefore they have an urge to exchange dresses. They have recently raised, I think, 200 million, and their valuation is above a billion. So they're the first official unicorn of Lithuania. The next one would be, I would say, quite unknown, but from my perspective, an even bigger startup. It's called Tesonet, and they have cybersecurity products such as NordVPN, and they're one of the global leaders in cybersecurity products. And last week they have launched a password manager, so they're expanding their portfolio of products in the cybersecurity or cyber safety space. Yes, B2C, but I think they have B2B products as well. But they have surpassed 1,000 employees, and I think they're like definitely a unicorn, but there is no official metric to track them down except for employees. And because they have, to my knowledge, they have raised no investment, so they are, they have bootstrapped to becoming a unicorn. And the next one, maybe the third one, I would say Hostinger. It's maybe not as exciting startup as others, but I hear that they have around 600 people right now, and they have dominated some of the global markets in web hosting services. So even in the industry that is, pretty old, web hosting.
And that's what I love about tech. You can have smaller companies come in and solve major pain points and totally just beat the existing incumbents. So I'm excited to see this as well. You had also mentioned there was a startup that was bought by Shopify.
Yeah, Oberlo. So those guys have built a startup in around 2 years, and it was bought by Shopify. So now it's part of Shopify. Essentially, Shopify is in Lithuania, and I see more and more really globally leading startups, establishing a presence in Lithuania, establishing a tech team here, or some R&D activity. So I think that scene is growing, and we'll see more and more international startups coming to Lithuania. But I also hope to see more and more Lithuanian startups succeeding on a global scale. And I think the success of Vinted, of Tesonet, of Hostinger has a lot of benefits to other startups, because people migrate across startups and tech scene, and they come with this newly acquired knowledge on how to do that. Because before those three, there were no startups that have made it big. They haven't seen how to operate with a few hundred people, and or how to tackle a global market from marketing perspective. So all those competencies were missing, and it's really hard to import them from like other countries, because you can only do this by apprenticeship, in my opinion. So you have to bring the people who know it and teach somebody else to do it. Therefore, I think Silicon Valley is in such a success because you have people who have done it. You can simply assemble a team of people who know what to do. And for us, it's often finding out what is the right way forward. And sometimes because of that, we can reinvent the wheel into something much better.
I've seen a lot of, if you know the PayPal Mafia model. In Latin America, you had the Mercado Libre Mafia. And these companies, these initial founders, contribute to so much of how the ecosystem has become successful or shaped today. For example, out of the PayPal Mafia, you had the Peter Thiel, you had the Elon Musk, Mercado Libre. After the founders got really successful, they started investing in local startups themselves. My thesis is, in every country, even if you have one really successful startup, that multiplier domino effect it has on the rest of the ecosystem is just so important. So exactly like you said, I think the key to startup is the apprenticeship part. Let's talk a little bit about the ecosystem. Like, as a founder, what are some of the key challenges in the ecosystem that stand in your way from succeeding?
I would say that first of all, it's knowledge. I do not know how to get the knowledge from Silicon Valley or from people there without spending time there on the ground. And it's rather impossible. And in creating startups, it's all about knowing what you need to do or experimenting. So knowledge and competences is one, but it's improving, as you said. Like the PayPal Mafia had a trickle down effect. We are seeing similar thing in Estonia. There is a case with Skype Mafia as well. They have created like 50 other startups, more or less, with team members from Skype. So in Lithuania, I would say we are creating the mafia right now. There is a mafia, but they have not made it big yet, and we will see the trickle down effects in the years to come. Aside from from the knowledge or competence issues, we have funding issues. Actually, the situation is much better today than it was a couple of years ago. But in general, you had to bootstrap yourself into success. And this is crazy hard. And up to this day, the VC finance startup growth model does not really work in Lithuania. I would say that VCs and accelerators are on the safe side. And, VCs and accelerators have the luxury basically the luxury of investing into startups that are really promising already. You would definitely give money to those startups, but everyone else who deserve a fair chance but do not have the traction that shows the credible path to success, they do not have any means of raising funding. So from having lived in the Bay Area and seeing at what stage startups raise money, what amounts of money, I would say that here in the Baltics it's much harder to do that, and therefore we can only observe a few instances where startups went big, such as Vinted, by not having profitability in very early years, but rather growing on venture capital money. This is uncommon. What is common is to bootstrap, get into profitability, and then take the venture capital money only if you really need it. I would say that only in the last couple of years we have unlocked the growth in startups. I think the ecosystem has tripled in the last couple of years, and it's not slowing down. And this is partly because of the capital that became available. So we have some of the first venture capital funds, or actually a bit more venture capital funds. We have more grants. We have some of the first accelerators. Although there were accelerators and venture capital funds that operated here, 5 or even 10 years ago, they were a drop in the ocean. They did not have enough capital to, make a change in the ecosystem. But I think now it has happened, and therefore I see much more interest from foreign venture capitalists to scout for companies and ideas in the Baltics, in Lithuania. But I think they just need some more emissaries here to scout those ecosystems properly, because there are definitely a lot of gems in plain sight.
And that's the idea of this podcast. A lot of our listeners are from the Bay Area, and we really want to open the doors to them and realize you don't need to keep investing in San Francisco. It is quite a tapped market, and there's so many startups in other parts of the world that are doing brilliant things that are probably a portion of what you're paying for the startup in San Francisco. Last question for you, Danielius. As a founder, what are the key traits you've found that make founders successful?
I think persistence and grit is probably the most important skill or even competence or trait that founders must possess. Actually, I have a funny story. Recently, with quite a few founders, we have run our first 100 kilometers distance. So I'm actually an ultra runner myself, and I joined those other founders in their 100 kilometer run challenge, and most of them, actually almost all of them, they're doing it for the first time. And I have seen many ultra races, and I have seen how people, when suffering, just quit. It's normal. Let's say some 30-40% do not complete ultra races. But in that group of around 10 people, who all their founders, 100% completed the race. That was crazy, because they haven't done this before. At most, they have done a marathon. And just because I think founders are so resilient and have so much grit, they could complete. So I think this is like indirectly the lesson that I have learned. What is the type of a founder? That you can persevere even if it's scorching hot, even if you are dehydrated, even if you are feeling so bad and you have stopped already thinking of dropping out. You still rise and continue to the finish. And the other two could be like learning, constantly learning, and then experimenting. So I think you have to have a desire to learn and the courage to act and fail. And I think if you're persistent, then I don't know whether immediately, but maybe in 5 years or on your 5th startup, you will start succeeding. And actually, this is what I observed, that people who persevered in the startup ecosystem eventually have managed to become successful startup founders and build great startups. So a failure is only a lesson, and you have to obtain a degree in failures in order to build a successful startup.
And that resonates so much, because one thing I'm hearing is stay flexible and nimble, but at the same time, don't give up. And some people might think those two things kind of contrast, but they're so important. This idea of keep learning, which also means be willing to prove yourself wrong, because information changes, context changes. So I think those are really helpful for founders. And you've gotten people so excited about the Lithuanian market, the Baltics. People listening to this probably would want to help. What are maybe 1 to 2 ways what they can do to help?
I would say reach out to us if you're interested at all. Reach out to Startup Lithuania, or reach out to me at Dan at BitDegree. You'll find somehow me. And there are so many people who are willing to learn and need collaborations. And we are feeling like an island here, not connected to the rest of the world.
I think that gets people excited. This willingness to collaborate. When I was in Vilnius, was that last year? You were so kind. You and your team were so kind in hosting me to speak to the ecosystem. So thank you for all you're doing in the ecosystem. I think for you, it's beyond being a founder, you're a super connector, and you're just someone really hell-bent on helping the ecosystem.
Thank you for spreading the word and helping the world to discover Lithuania and the Baltics.
Thanks for joining us today on the Emerging Markets Tech Startup Show. If you have questions, comments, requests for me to cover an emerging market, or want to be connected with today's guest, leave me a comment in the reviews or find me on Twitter at Diana Yao. Until next time,